This is Chapter 2, Part 4 of Grigori Grabovoi's The Resurrection of People in Eternal Life from Now On as Our Reality. I'm Stephen Walters. I am a real human being, and this is my real human voice. Let's begin. We shall now proceed to the final section of the core principles of resurrection. Resurrection is control of the entire external space. 4.1. During the resurrection, we deal with the following interesting fact. The entire external space, which includes the entire outside environment and the entire outer space, plays sort of the role of pressure. This situation may be compared with one in which each one of us indwells on the surface of the earth. I am talking of the air pressure. Air represents a fairly rare medium. Its density is scant compared to the density of solid substances. However, the depth of the atmospheric layer is huge, and due to this, it presses down on each square centimeter of the Earth's surface with a force of 1 kilogram, so that every square centimeter of our body experiences a force action equal to 1 kilogram. So, during the resurrection, the operation of the following physical and at the same time biological principle may be observed. Each element being restored experiences pressure of information, of informational systems, of biological systems, of physical systems. That pressure occurring during the resurrection acts on each and every cell, on every molecule, on every element being restored, regenerated. It should be noted here that when the restoration, the regeneration of a certain element is taking place, in order for it to be materialized, space has to be actually moved apart, as well as time, but predominantly space, external space, since the resurrection is brought about by an impulse coming from within. It is an inner impulse. It is an impulse of the soul. It follows that the proper way to send a spiritual impulse, created, as they say, at the inner level, that is, at soul level, is in fact the mechanism of the resurrection. We can see, therefore, that given proper soul pulsations, so to speak, the body is eternal. Or, in other words, when control of the entire external space is proper, man becomes immortal. If we consider the recreation of the elements of an object being restored, regenerated sequentially, there is a point to be made. For example, a cell was recreated as a result of an impulse of consciousness. Now, the entire external space has to be controlled so that this cell would not disappear, that it would survive, and that one more cell would be created. Now we have 2 cells in the external space. We continue adding cells, and now we have an organ in the external space, then a number of organs, and finally the whole person and the entire external space. Certain properties of the event must be added here as well. For instance, where precisely the resurrection is to occur. It took us some time to sequentially analyze the resurrection process element by element. However, in reality, this process can happen very fast, and in fact, even instantaneously. Another way of formulating the essence of the principle is this. External space may be perceived as a precision system, in which case, provided there is a specific response to the system during the process of the resurrection, the resurrected one, or a restored, regenerated object appears. And this is, in fact, one of the resurrection technologies, when space is utilized to restore, to regenerate an object. It is also worth noting that during the resurrection, 2 approaches may be utilized, within and without. In the first approach, the one performing the resurrection looks at the external space from within, through the one being resurrected, and as if presses the right space point. In the second approach, the one performing the resurrection, vice versa, looks from without, from the external space. The final result, of course, is the same. So, during the resurrection process, all world connections are involved. They all start changing, and thereunder, the entire external space must be controlled in such a way that the resurrection act should take place. Man is the entire external and internal world simultaneously. 4.2. Man holds an entirely special place in the world. I have already said that, and it is because man has been created in God's own image and likeness. Previously, I have told about the eagle, about its amazing abilities, about its command of teleportation, about its ability to create anti-gravity, and so on. So, when we consider the internal and external worlds of the eagle, it turns out that its internal world is represented to a lesser degree than the external world. In other words, eagle's information of the internal and external worlds is different, whilst for a man it is one and the same. And we may even say that if a certain object's information of the internal and external world is one and the same simultaneously, it means this object is man. And we may add, as the analysis of the world evolution shows, all information objects are evolving towards man. In general, the entire world tends to man, to his shape, to his mode of response, reaction, and evolution. The manifestation of this can be seen everywhere. Let's turn, for example, to the work of astronomers. Scientists armed with telescopes study stars, constellations, globular clusters, galaxies, in short, everything that is laid out before their eyes. Let's take a look at the scientist's action from the outside. We can make the following comparison. Imagine that all of a sudden you may find yourself inside a human body, say within the interior of the lungs, and having looked about, started entering in the log everything you were observing from your position. You too could register different objects and all sorts of clusters and assemblies, for example, of same cells. That is what you would see from the interior. So the scientists do not realize that through optical telescopes, they observe a huge organism from within. If they could look at this organism from outside, they would see the informational representation of man. And then, as a revelation, comes a new understanding of the saying mentioned before. Man has been made in the image and likeness of God. This saying, like any great truth, has many facets. It has many aspects. If the objects of the universe, observed by the astronomers, are approached from the perspective just given, then it is possible even to forecast how these objects and the universe itself will be evolving further on. To do this, one just needs to know the development of man here. Knowing the development of man here, we can speak of further evolution of the universe. We can say, for example, what the dynamics of eternity will be. I can say, this is Grigori Grabovoi speaking, that static images will pass into dynamic. There won't be a notion of space there anymore. Space over there will be pulled into the soul structure, into the structure of the spiritual impulse. And therefore, it turns out that there, the soul, the spirit, are in the truest sense the base, and it, the spirit, forms everything. By analogy with man, by applying the similarity principle, we can say that the mutual shaping of perception in the world is taking place now at the level of atoms, molecules, cells. From now forward, the concentration of matter will be increasing. Organs will become apparent. Though their formation is already underway, the brain will become apparent, and the interaction between the separate parts of this giant organism will take shape. And when I say that the salvation of the world in one place is at the same time the salvation of everything, then this too will be easily understood on the basis of the similarity principle. If a person has a certain serious disease, for example, a heart ailment or a kidney disease, his life may be threatened as a result of that. But if the functioning of this specific organ is improved, if they become restored, become healthy again, then the person too, in whole, will become healthy. The same applies to the world. And another thing to be kept in mind is that all has been created based on the principles of interaction, intersection, and mutual conditionality. So now makeup of the universe is mainly at the level of atoms, molecules, cells. However, the process of both their concentration and therefore makeup of organs like formations as well can already be observed. For example, the heart. And further on, there will be the transition to the pulsation levels, such as beatings of the heart. Thus, what scientists call the expansion of the universe is actually only a taken out phase in one of the beatings of the emerging heart, as well as lungs expansion associated with it. Knowing all this, it is possible to create such telescope systems, which will allow to see space from the other side, And thus, it will be possible to observe stars, globular clusters, galaxies from either direction, both from within and without. And what is more, knowing how the universe evolves, it is possible to make such optical systems, which will be able to see a future structure of an object. That is, what this object will look like in the future. We may recall that in ancient times, crystals were used for such purposes. The images appearing inside them would give the information sought for. Though, of course, the easiest way to obtain such information is through clairvoyance. In connection with the above said, I would like to mention space travels too. Everything, as I have already said, rests upon the image of man, on his shape, on functioning and interaction of his organs. If we know how blood travels throughout the human body, how human heart functions, how the entire human body works altogether, then we can build ships, which will travel by utilizing the natural level of space motion. Perhaps I'll say a little bit more about this. I will say it again. We are now at the level of development characterized by the fact that we predominantly perceive the molecular structure of the universe. That is precisely how the observational result of the astronomers can be interpreted. However, if we adopt such a viewpoint, then we immediately can say how a spaceflight must be organized. If we take a particle of blood, a tiny one, which is now, let's say, in the region of the leg, then after a while, due to the blood circulation through the vessels, through the body channels, this particle will find itself in the region of the heart. Mind you, without any effort on our part. Its travel is attributable just to the fact of being inside within a living body. Our universe is also a living organism, just very large. The analogy that we've already used allows the possibility to understand that no engines for a spaceship are in fact necessary. The only thing to do to make space travel possible is to spot the ship within the proper channel, and that's all. And then, in a while, the ship on its own will find itself in the location that we need. More than that, if we go deeper into these issues, it will become clear that our ship is able to even instantaneously find itself, for example, in another galaxy altogether. Virtually having attained a certain level of spiritual development, any person without any ships is able to find himself at will in any point of the universe. Here is another important example of my science application relevant to this subject. Presently, I have developed a spacecraft creation technology navigated through an optical system. This system is crystal-based. It suffices to send a mental signal to the crystal for it to begin to set in motion the entire mechanism, and it suffices to specify only the destination coordinates in the initial impulse. The crystal will do the rest. On its own, it will signal out the proper channel, and on its own will position the ship into the desired point. The principle of similarity between the universe and the human body, underlies this fundamentally new principle of space flights. As I have said earlier, based on this similarity, one may make forecasts regarding further development of the universe. However, to be deep, thorough, these forecasts must be based upon the knowledge of laws, the laws of development. Thus, if we would like to understand the course of further evolution of the universe by applying similarity principle, not only must we have a good understanding of the human body organization, but as well study both man's psychology and modes of his interaction with other people, and gain insight into how, in general, communication in the human society is carried out. Having found the answers to these questions, it will become possible to control much larger areas of the world. So, the approach is quite simple here. The similarity principle that is being considered now can be applied to the development of new technologies, to creation of fundamentally new technical devices, like those spaceships I've just spoken about. And what is very important, this principle will ensure the harmonicity of development. I will give a few more examples from my practice of similarity principle application. When transforming one object into another, an object must be transformed according to the principles of the organization of man. When I, for example, transform one substance into another, the human form, the human matrix can serve as a transformation form. When I, let's suppose, started looking at a certain substance and began acquiring information it was giving, then irrespective of what kind of knowledge exists about the substance, be it symbolic or as formulas, irrespective of that, in this substance, each of its elements, everywhere, we can see man. If we look once again at the aforementioned lion, we will see that it represents the structure of man's thought forms. If we look at the eagle from that same perspective, it will become clear that it represents the structure of the events man would wish to accomplish. We may continue this sequence into infinity. If we go deeper into all this, we may discover that the entire outside environment, outside in relation to man, is created in the similitudes of his manifestation. That is, to understand why animals or other entities or matter in general have been created the way they have. To understand this, we have to look at man and his actions. Everything man is surrounded with is his current actions and the effect of his previous actions. It follows that when man extirpates a certain species, he thus virtually affects himself. Genuine ecology is in understanding of this fact. Based on the knowledge I provide, we can say at once what will happen as a result of extirpating a certain animal species by man, what evolutionary species will emerge in the future, that is, what specific form the next animal species will take. We can also say what specific changes will result from the technogenic path of development. Knowing all this, we can balance and create the forms desired. In the future crossing of species in genera, their synthesis won't constitute a crucial problem any longer, as distinct from what we have today. And if we decide to create a certain mixed species, this will be possible to do. The technology is simple enough here. One has to know the organization of man. So, a well-known old-time motto, know thyself, as we can see, has many aspects. Comprehension of this principle gives a true understanding of the world organization, and its realization leads to the effective opening of the flower of life. Time dilation. Its removal or approaching means resurrection for some aspects of space. 4.3. It has already been stated in section 2 of this chapter that time is a construct of consciousness. Time is created with respect to space by people's thoughts. For people who have an ordinary state of consciousness, introducing time, it may be said, is very worthwhile, even necessary. Having time is very convenient for them. Take, for instance, a train timetable or a flight schedule. The schedule ensures regulating and safety of traffic. And in general, the notion of time is applied to almost all areas of life. The creation of the concept time also means both the creation of information and the creation of space, of such space in which the concept of time is in existence. This principle is about time dilation. It's moving off or drawing near for some aspects of space. This refers to those spaces in which time exists. And, besides, to the fact that not only time is connected with space, but also has its properties. For example, such as dilation, moving off or drawing near. For the resurrected one, the space in which a concept of time is in existence means life. And time, in relation to space, as I have just said, is created by people's thoughts. That is why we can mentally dilate time, moving it off, draw it near. And since for people with an ordinary state of consciousness, many events are associated with time, as, for example, the notion of departure, they come to understand that by dilating time, by moving it off or drawing near, it is really possible to carry out the resurrection. The issue under discussion now can be looked at from a somewhat different angle. In relation to the notions of life and the resurrection, time dilation, its moving off or drawing near, mean in fact an introduction of a thought form of the resurrection, and the introduction of the thought form results in structural change of reality. I will now clarify the term, a thought form. The thought form. A thought form is a structure, perceptible through the man's consciousness, relating to the information content called thought. That is, a thought form is in fact a specific geometric shape which contains a thought of a person. If we take the space of thought, one may either visualize it or enter it directly. Then, for example, A table represents one information configuration. A chair does another. A person represents still another. That is, a thought form is expressly a shape, which, according to the thought it carries, corresponds to a certain information object. Summing up, we can put it quite simply. A thought form is a shape of a thought, containing some specific information. As I have said, as Grigori Grabovoi has said, a thought form is perceived through man's consciousness. When in life you encounter a certain entity, you can look at it from different perspectives. If it is, for example, a plane, you can have a look, let's say at the cockpit, or at the airplane's wings, or its tail. The same is with a thought form. Since it is indeed a real object, a real shape, then when perceiving it, consciousness can touch it from different angles. And just as in the case with a plane, when you can see its different elements, so in this case, when consciousness touches different aspects of a thought form, reception of different thoughts occurs. Consider a specific example. Let's say someone went to the store to buy a bottle of mineral water. The corresponding thought form carries the person's idea to buy a bottle of mineral water. But not only that, it also contains a sense of occasion. He knows where he will go, which way, and the notion that he will probably have to get dressed if it is wintertime. All this, as well as many other things, are contained in this single thought form. Using scientific language, we may say that a single thought form carries many conceptual parameters. Scanning rate of a thought form to identify these parameters, that is, processing rate of the information contained in the thought form, may differ depending on the level of a person's development, and the difference can be very substantial. A person with an ordinary state of consciousness, as a rule, in general, perceives only a portion of a thought form, but if the level of a person's spiritual development is high enough, all aspects of a thought form are taken in simultaneously, that is, in full and instantaneously. The consideration of the thought form notion proves to be important also from another practical point of view. I'm referring to control of technical systems. Let's examine this issue. There is such a fact. Thought forms, without fail, interconnect geometrically with one of the soul's aspects, such as life. That's the way things are. The thought is hierarchically connected with the soul either directly, which, to tell you the truth, rarely happens, or indirectly, through the structure of gathered experience. That is why the thought form is controlled directly from the soul. And since the soul responds to the reality of fundamental nature, therefore, the thought form exchange process with the external world turns out to be decelerated, or for some period, there is none at all. So the thought form is controlled directly from the soul, and thus, an impulse from the external world can't reach it, can't change it, and therefore, control through the thought represents the most immune control system. At first glance, it would seem that technical means must be the most resistant to control technical devices, technical equipment, that they allegedly must be more resistant than the thought. However, in reality, it is not so. In actual fact, the thought is the most resistant system, and thus the control of technical devices. Technical equipment by the thought, or the thought form, is the most reliable kind of control. A specific example will help to understand it. Let's say a plane is flying by an autopilot. The contact of a technical device, in this case the autopilot, with the external environment is permanent, which represents a substantial potential danger. The autopilot may, for example, get hit by a missile, or it may get disabled in any other manner. But if we have the thought as a controlling system, it virtually may have no contact with the outside environment at all. And though, of course, basically, contacts are present between all elements. But in this case, I am referring to the duration of the contact, to the fact that a thought contact can be instantaneous, while an autopilot contact, both with a plane and with the external space, is permanent. And if the contact of a controlling thought with a plane is instantaneous, then the external environment is unable to alter this thought. And thus, the plane can fly the planned route without any problem, and it will make it through, no matter what. I would like to note, in particular here, that the safety component of any object as well can be put into the thought. The capability to do so is based on the thought immunity to the outside environment. Grigori Grabovoi has, received an invention patent for information transmission and control by thought device. We now turn back to the question of the use of thought forms for the resurrection. Having formed the desirable thought form, it is now possible to restore, to regenerate the body anywhere, even where there's no suitable for life environment, where, let's say, there's no air but vacuum. However, if the thought form has been formed properly, then in this environment oxygen and everything else needed will appear instead of vacuum, and everything will be all right.